What's a time you knew a goodbye would last forever? I was 23 when my best friend Nola told me she was moving to Portland for a tech job. We'd been inseparable since second grade, the kind of friends who finished each other's sentences and had matching everything. She knew how I took my coffee. I knew which songs made her cry. We'd planned our lives together, imagining apartments in the same building and kids who'd grow up as close as we were. When she got the offer, I helped her pack. I drove her to apartment viewings over FaceTime. I even threw her a going-away party at my tiny apartment, making too many cupcakes and crying in the bathroom when no one was looking. "I'll visit constantly," she promised, hugging me tight in my doorway. "We'll text every day. Nothing's going to change." For the first month, we kept that promise. Daily texts turned into weekly calls. Weekly calls became monthly check-ins. I understood. She had a new job, new friends, a whole new life. I stayed in our hometown, working at the same dental office, living with my parents to save money. My life looked exactly the same. Hers was expanding in ways I couldn't even imagine. The breaking point came during her first visit home, 8 months later. She suggested we grab coffee at our old spot, the diner where we'd spent countless hours studying and gossiping, the same booth where she'd told me about her first kiss, where I'd cried about my dad losing his job, where we'd made pacts and promises and plans. I showed up early, nervous for some reason. When she walked in, she looked different. Not just her haircut or clothes, but the way she carried herself, confident, polished, like someone who'd outgrown this place. We ordered our usual drinks, but the conversation felt stiff. She talked about her company's projects using acronyms I didn't understand. She mentioned coworkers with unusual names like Thorn and Caspian. She described restaurants and concerts and weekend trips to the coast. I talked about my nephew's birthday party and how they finally fixed the pothole on Maple Street. "That's great," she'd say, but her eyes would glaze over. An hour in, she checked her phone for the third time. "Sorry, my boyfriend's been texting. We're supposed to meet his parents tonight." Boyfriend. She hadn't mentioned a boyfriend in our last 3 calls. "How long have you been seeing him?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. 4 months? Maybe 5? She waved her hand dismissively. It's been a whirlwind. 5 months and she hadn't told me. 5 months of daily life I knew nothing about. I realized then that our friendship had become performative. We were going through the motions of staying close while actually being strangers. When the check came, we both reached for it. "I got it," she insisted. "I'm making good money now." It wasn't a kind gesture. It was a reminder of the distance between us. We walked to our cars in the parking lot. She hugged me, and it felt mechanical. "We should do this more often," she said. I miss this. But she didn't miss it, and we both knew it. I watched her drive away in her new hybrid, heading to her parents' house for a quick dinner before flying back to her real life. I sat in my decade-old sedan, hands on the steering wheel, crying for the second time in 8 months. That's when I decided I wasn't going to chase this anymore. No more enthusiastic texts that got one-word responses. No more pretending our friendship still existed. Some goodbyes happen slowly, one unanswered text at a time, until you realize you've already said your last real conversation and didn't even know it. 3 weeks later, my mom handed me an envelope that had arrived in the mail. Inside was a wedding invitation. Nola and her boyfriend were getting married in Portland in 6 weeks. I was invited as a general guest. No +1, seated at table 14 with people I'd never met. Her bridesmaids were her new Portland friends. Women I'd never heard of were standing beside her on the most important day of her life. I threw the invitation away. I didn't RSVP. 2 months after her wedding, I got a text. "Hey, I know things have been weird. Can we talk?" I stared at those words for 3 days. Finally, I agreed to call her. She answered on the first ring. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. "And after I do, you're going to understand why I really left." I waited. The silence stretched between us like the 2,000 miles that now separated our lives. "Remember the week before I got the job offer?" she asked. "When I canceled our dinner plans because I had the flu?" I remembered. I'd brought her soup and left it on her doorstep, texted her to feel better. She'd responded with a thumbs-up emoji, nothing else. "I didn't have the flu," she said. "I was at your mom's house." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Your mom called me. She asked me to come over when you were at work. She made me tea and we sat in her living room for 2 hours. Nola's voice cracked. "She told me that you'd been accepted to that graphic design program in Chicago, the one you'd applied to in secret." I felt the room tilt. I had applied to that program. 8 months before Nola got her Portland offer, I'd sent in my portfolio, written essays, secured recommendation letters. It was a prestigious 1-year intensive program that could have launched my actual career instead of answering phones at Dr. Brennan's dental practice. I'd been too scared to tell anyone, even Nola, especially Nola, because we'd always talked about staying in our hometown together, building our lives side by side. "Your mom said you'd gotten in with a partial scholarship," Nola continued. "She said it was your dream, but you'd turned it down without telling anyone because you didn't want to leave me alone here." "That's not..." I started, but the lie died in my throat. It was true. I had turned it down. I'd received the acceptance letter on a Tuesday in March, stared at it for 3 days, then sent an email declining the offer. The program started in September. Nola and I had plans for that fall. We were going to finally rent an apartment together, adopt a dog, host weekly game nights. How could I abandon her for some program that might not even lead anywhere? "Your mom told me I was holding you back," Nola said. "She said you'd never leave as long as I was there, that you'd spend your whole life working at that dental office, waiting for me to need you. She said I was your excuse not to take risks. She had no right." She was right, though. Nola's voice was quiet now. We were each other's safety nets, and neither of us was brave enough to jump without the other's permission. I sat on my bed, phone pressed to my ear, processing this. My mom had ambushed my best friend, had told her things I'd never spoken out loud. When I got the Portland offer 3 weeks later, Nola said, it felt like the universe giving me an out. A a way to leave that didn't make me the bad guy. I could move for a job, not abandon you. But really, I was freeing both of us. By not telling me any of this, my voice rose, by just leaving and slowly ghosting me, I thought if I pulled away gradually, you'd start building your own life, make new friends, maybe reapply to that program. She paused. I thought it would hurt less than the truth, which was what? That we'd become codependent, that we were using our friendship as an excuse not to grow, that we were both scared of becoming adults. So we stayed in this bubble where nothing had to change. Her breathing was uneven. Your mom said something that haunted me. She said, "My daughter is brilliant, and you're the only person who doesn't see it because you need her to stay small." I wanted to argue, to defend our friendship, to say my mom had manipulated her, but part of me recognized the truth in it. How many times had I talked about going back to school, only to drop it when Nola suggested we binge watch a show instead? How many opportunities had I brushed off because they felt too big, too scary, too different from the comfortable life we'd built? So you moved to Portland and just, what, decided to hurt me on purpose? I asked. The boyfriend you didn't mention, the wedding I wasn't part of, all of that was intentional? Not at first, she said. At first, I really did try to stay close, but then I started noticing things. Every time I'd tell you about something good happening, you'd have this tone in your voice, like you were happy for me, but also not. And every time I asked about your life, you'd make it sound so mundane, so stuck, and I'd feel guilty for leaving. So you just stopped asking? I stopped calling as much because every conversation felt like I was rubbing my new life in your face while you were stuck in the same place. And then I met Devin, and things moved fast. And I knew if I told you about him, you'd ask questions I couldn't answer without admitting I was moving on completely. His name is Devin? I asked stupidly. After all this, that's what my brain caught on. Yeah, she laughed a little, sad and tired. Devin Reed. He's a software engineer. We met at a company mixer. You married him. It wasn't a question. I did. And I didn't include you in the wedding because I couldn't figure out how. You weren't part of my Portland life, but you also weren't really part of my past anymore because I'd cut those ties to force both of us forward. You existed in this weird in-between space and I didn't know where you fit. I pulled my knees to my chest. You could have just told me all this. 18 months ago, you could have sat me down and said, "Your mom talked to me and here's what I'm thinking." Would you have listened? Or would you have convinced me we were fine and I should stay? She had a point. I would have fought it. Would have promised we'd both grow, both change, both take risks. Together, the way we'd always done everything. I saw the program rejection in your email once, she admitted. You left your laptop open at my apartment, remember? 3 months before I left. I saw the email declining the Chicago offer and I didn't say anything because part of me was relieved. You were staying. We could keep pretending we were still 17 and nothing had to be scary. Jesus, Nola. I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She was crying now. Your mom was right. We were making each other smaller, and the only way I could figure out how to break that cycle was to leave and stay gone. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. The anger I'd been carrying for months was still there, but it felt different now. Complicated. Messy. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. You've been married for 2 months. What changed? Devin asked me about you, about my hometown friends, my childhood, and I realized I couldn't talk about any of it without talking about you, but I also couldn't explain why we weren't friends anymore without admitting what I'd done. She took a shaky breath, and then his sister came to visit last week. They're best friends, closer than most siblings. They have their own lives, but they still talk every day, support each other, celebrate each other's wins without resentment. And I realized maybe we were the broken ones. Maybe healthy friendships don't require sacrifice. I wanted to hang up, to tell her it was too late, the damage was done, we couldn't fix this. Instead, I asked, what did you tell him about me? The truth, that you were my person for 15 years. That I loved you more than that I destroyed our friendship because I thought it was the right thing to do, and I'd been carrying that guilt every day since. And what did he say? He said I should call you. She laughed sadly. He said real friendship can survive distance and growth and hard conversations. That if our friendship couldn't survive those things, maybe it wasn't as strong as I thought. Or maybe I just didn't fight hard enough to keep it. We sat in silence. Not the comfortable silence of two people who knew each other, but the awkward silence of strangers trying to figure out if there was anything left to say. I don't know if I can forgive you, I finally said. Not right away. You made choices for both of us without asking. You and my mom decided what was best for me like I was a child. I know. And you're right that I made you my excuse. I did. I was scared of leaving, scared of failing, scared of losing the one constant thing in my life. So I blamed our friendship for keeping me here when really, I was just afraid. Are you still there? She asked quietly. At the dental office, with your parents? Yeah, I felt embarrassed admitting it. Still at Dr. Brennan's, still in my childhood bedroom, still in the same town where nothing changes. It's been 2 years. You could still— Don't. I cut her off. Don't tell me what I could do. You don't get to do that anymore. You're right. I'm sorry. Another silence. Longer this time. Did you know my mom had a stroke 6 months ago? I asked. Did you know my dad lost his job at the plant? Did you know I'm not at the dental office anymore because Dr. Brennan retired and sold his practice? No. Her voice was small. I didn't know any of that. I'm so sorry. Is your mom okay? She's recovering. Physical therapy 3 times a week. Dad found part-time work at Home Depot, but it doesn't pay what the plant did. I'm working 2 jobs now, at the new dental practice and weekend shifts at Target, to help with their bills. That's why you stayed, she said, understanding dawning. Not because of me or fear, because your family needed you. Partly, but also because you were right. I was scared. And when my mom got sick, it became the perfect excuse to stay small, stay safe, stay exactly where I was. I picked at the comforter on my bed. The program in Chicago accepts applications every year. I could have reapplied. I didn't. Why not? Because what if I went and failed? What if I spent all that money and time and ended up right back here anyway? Except worse. A failure instead of just someone who never tried? You wouldn't fail. You don't know that. You haven't known me in 2 years. That landed between us like a stone. I want to know you again, Nola said, if you'll let me. Not like before. I know we can't go back to that. but maybe something new, something healthier. I thought about the wedding invitation in my trash can, about the Instagram photos of her perfect Portland life that I'd scrolled through obsessively, looking for proof that she was happier without me, about the nights I typed out angry texts and deleted them unsent. I need time, I said. I need to process all of this. The stuff with my mom, with you leaving, with everything you just told me. Okay, I understand. And I need you to understand that I might not forgive you. Or I might forgive you but still not want to be friends again. I don't know yet. I understand that too. But also, I paused, surprised by what I was about to say. Thank you for calling, for telling me the truth, even though it took you this long. At least now I know it wasn't just that I wasn't good enough for your new life. God, no. Never that. She was crying again. You were always too good for me. That was part of the problem. We talked for another 20 minutes. Awkward, stilted conversation about safe topics. Her job, my jobs, the weather, mutual acquaintances from high school. It felt like learning a new language, or relearning an old one you'd forgotten. When we finally said goodbye, I didn't promise to call her back. She didn't ask me to, but I didn't delete her number either. 3 days later, my mom asked me to help her with her physical therapy exercises. As I supported her arm through the movements the therapist had shown us, I said, "Why did you talk to Nola about the Chicago program?" Her hand stiffened in mine. "She told you about that?" "Yeah, in a phone call earlier this week. Want to explain why you ambushed my best friend with information I'd specifically kept private?" My mom was quiet for a long moment, working through the shoulder rotation. "Because I watched you turn down the opportunity of a lifetime, and I couldn't let you do it without a fight. So you went behind my back? I went to the one person who might actually be able to change your mind." She looked at me with those sharp eyes that had seen right through me my entire life. "You wouldn't have listened to me. You'd have had all your reasons ready. The money, the timing, Nola needing you. But if Nola had told you to go, you would have gone. So you manipulated her into leaving instead?" "I gave her information and let her make her own choice, which is more than you were doing. You were making her your excuse without even realizing it." She winced as she stretched. "You've always done that. Found someone or something to blame for not taking risks. In high school, it was money. In college, it was not knowing what you wanted to study. After college, it was Nola. That's not fair, isn't it? You're brilliant, sweetheart. You always have been. Your artwork could compete with people twice your age, but you're so afraid of failing that you'd rather not try at all." She met my eyes. "And Nola was the perfect excuse because you'd wrapped your identities together so tightly that leaving her felt like losing yourself." I helped her into bed, arranging her pillows the way she liked. "You should have told me you talked to her." "You're right, I should have. I thought about it for months. But then she moved, and you seemed fine, and I convinced myself it didn't matter." She reached for my hand. "And then I had the stroke and needed you here, and I realized I'd meddled in your life to give you freedom, but ended up trapping you here anyway. I chose to stay to help you and Dad. That's not being trapped." "But it is though, isn't it? You're using us the same way you used Nola, as a reason not to chase what you really want." Her grip tightened. "I'm recovering. Your dad found work. We're going to be fine. But you're going to wake up at 35 still in this town, still making excuses, still wondering what your life could have been." I pulled my hand away. "I need to go to work." Think about what I said. I did think about it. For weeks. Every time I filed paperwork at the dental office, or scanned items at Target, or came home to my childhood bedroom, I thought about the choices I'd made and the ones I hadn't, about the difference between sacrifice and martyrdom, about whether I was helping my family or hiding behind them. During my lunch break one Wednesday, I pulled up the Chicago program website. Applications for the next cohort were due in 3 months. The program still looked incredible, rigorous and competitive, and exactly what I'd dreamed about. The cost was still astronomical, even with the scholarship they'd offered before, but there were other programs. Ones closer to home, or online, or part-time, ways to grow without abandoning my family. I started researching, made spreadsheets, requested information packets, filled out a FAFSA for the first time since college. Small steps, but they felt enormous. Nola texted me during this time. Not often, maybe once every week or two. She'd send articles she thought I'd like, or photos of Portland, or just thinking of you today. I didn't always respond, but I didn't block her either. Sometimes I'd reply with 1 or 2 words. Sometimes I'd send a photo back, usually of something mundane in my life. The new coffee shop that opened downtown, my nephew's birthday cake, a sunset from my bedroom window. It wasn't friendship, not really, but it wasn't nothing either. 2 months after our phone call, she sent me a longer message. "I know you're not ready to be friends again, and I respect that. But I wanted you to know that talking to you changed something for me. I've been seeing a therapist here in Portland to work through some stuff about relationships and boundaries, and why I handle conflict by running away. She says I have an avoidant attachment style, which is apparently a thing with roots in childhood stuff I won't bore you with. Anyway, I'm trying to do better at showing up for people, even when it's hard, even when I'm scared of disappointing them. I just thought you should know that our conversation started something important for me. Thank you for that." I read it 5 times before responding. "I'm glad you're working on yourself. I've been thinking about a lot of stuff too." 3 weeks later, at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, she called me. I almost didn't answer. "Hey," she said when I picked up. "Is this a bad time?" "I'm just watching TV. What's up?" "I had this memory today. Remember when we were 16 and we drove to that lake 2 hours away because we'd heard there was some secret swimming spot?" I smiled despite myself. "And we couldn't find it, so we just swam in the regular part of the lake and got sunburned. We looked like lobsters at school on Monday." She laughed. "God, we were so stupid. We were 16. Everyone's stupid at 16. Do you remember what we talked about that day? In the car, on the way home?" I tried to recall. "Not really. Probably boys or something. We talked about what we wanted to be when we grew up. You said you wanted to design book covers for a living, that you wanted to create art that made people pick up books they wouldn't normally choose." She paused. "Do you still want that?" I don't know. Maybe. It's been so long since I let myself think about things like that. You should. Not for me or your mom or anyone else, but because you're genuinely talented and the world is worse off without your art in it. That's a very dramatic statement. I'm serious. Do you remember the poster you made for the school play senior year? People kept trying to steal it to keep after the show was over. They had to lock it in the drama room. It was just a poster. It wasn't. It was gorgeous. It made people feel something. She took a breath. I know I screwed everything up between us. And I know you might never want to be my friend again, but I don't want to live in a world where you're not making art, even if I never get to see it. My throat felt tight. Why are you saying this now? Because I was looking at Devon's sister's apartment today. She's an architect and her walls are covered with blueprints and sketches and models of buildings she's designed. And I thought about how our apartment in Portland has nothing of mine on the walls. Nothing I created or built or made. And I realized I don't actually do anything that matters. I manage projects for tech products that'll be obsolete in 3 years. But you could create things that last. There's nothing wrong with what you do. I know, but there's also nothing special about it. I'm replaceable. You're not. She was quiet for a moment. I guess I just wanted to tell you that if you decide to go for it, whatever it is for you, I'll be cheering you on, even if it's from a distance, even if you never talk to me again. We talked until almost 1 a.m. Not about our friendship or what had happened, but about small things. Weird customers at work, TV shows we were watching, a recipe she'd tried that failed spectacularly. It felt almost normal, with only the occasional pause reminding us of everything unspoken between us. When we hung up, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Then I got up, pulled out the box of art supplies I'd shoved in my closet 3 years ago, and started sketching. I sketched until dawn. Rough ideas mostly. Book covers like I'd told her I wanted to do. Designs for stories that existed only in my imagination. Some were terrible. Some showed promise. The next morning, exhausted but buzzing with something that felt like hope, I sent in an application to an online certificate program in graphic design. It was through a state university, affordable enough that I could manage it with my current jobs. The classes were at night and on weekends, self-paced enough that I could adjust around my parents' needs. It wasn't Chicago. It wasn't the prestigious intensive program I'd turned down, but it was something. It was a start. I didn't tell Nola about it. Not yet. This needed to be mine first, before I let anyone else into it. The acceptance email came 4 weeks later. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes before it felt real. I'd been accepted. Classes started in January, 3 months away. This time, I said yes. I told my parents over dinner that night. My dad looked surprised but pleased. My mom cried a little, then hugged me hard with her good arm. "I'm proud of you," she said. "And I'm sorry about the Nola thing. I should have let you make your own choices. You're not wrong that I needed a push. I just wish it had been a more honest one." She nodded, understanding. I waited 2 days before texting Nola. I got into a program, graphic design certificate, online, so I can stay here and help with mom, but it's something. Her response came in seconds. "That's amazing. When does it start?" "January. I'm so happy for you." And then, "I'm really proud of you." I know that might not mean much anymore, but I am. I stared at her words. She was right. It shouldn't have meant much. She'd forfeited her right to be proud of me when she left without explanation, when she cut me out of her wedding, when she let our friendship die slowly instead of being honest. But it did mean something. Against all logic, it did. "Thank you," I wrote back. "That means more than you know." Christmas came. My parents' financial situation had stabilized enough that Dad picked up a second part-time job, and we could mostly cover bills without my help. My mom's recovery continued steadily. She'd regained most of her mobility and was talking about going back to work part-time in the spring. On Christmas Eve, as I was wrapping presents in my room, my phone rang. "Nola." "Hey," I answered. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas." I could hear voices in the background. Devon's family, probably. "I'm calling because I wanted to invite you to something, and I need you to say no if the answer is no, okay? No polite yeses just to spare my feelings." "Okay." Devon's company does this team retreat thing every year. Next summer, it's in Seattle. Partners are invited, and there's this whole optional side program for people who aren't employees. Tours, activities, whatever. It's fully covered by his company. She rushed through the words like she was afraid of losing nerve. "I'd like you to come as my guest. We'd have our own room, obviously, and you could do your own thing most of the time. But there would also be some structured activities where we'd be together. Like a chance to spend time in the same place without the pressure of our entire history hanging over us." "Nola, I know it's a lot to ask, and I know you might not want to spend a weekend with me, but we'd be in a beautiful city, all expenses paid, and maybe it would help us figure out if there's any way forward, or it would give us closure. Either way, I think we both need something more than these awkward texts." I thought about it, really thought about it. "When in the summer?" "Late June, the 25th through the 28th. And Devon's okay with this?" He suggested it. "He says I need to stop running from hard conversations, and this felt like a controlled environment where we couldn't just avoid each other." She laughed nervously. His exact words were, "Either fix this or let it go, but stop existing in this painful middle ground." He sounds wise. He has his moments. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. I thought about it for 2 weeks. Made a pros and cons list. Talked it through with my mom, who said it was up to me, but that running from hard things was how we ended up with regrets. Asked myself honestly if I wanted Nola back in my life, or if I was just lonely and nostalgic. I didn't have a clear answer to that last question, but I realized that was okay. I didn't need to know the ending before I agreed to show up. "I'll come," I texted her in early January, "but I reserve the right to hate it and leave early if needed." "Fair enough. Thank you for being open to it." My design program started the second week of January. It was harder than I expected. Not the coursework itself, but finding time for it around my 2 jobs and my parents' needs. But it also felt right in a way nothing had felt right in years. I'd come home from Target at 11 p.m., exhausted, and still stay up until 2 a.m., working on assignments because I couldn't bear to stop. I was creating again, finally. In February, I submitted my first major project, a series of book cover mock-ups for classic novels. My instructor gave me an A and wrote, You have a strong instinct for visual storytelling. Keep pushing yourself. I sent a photo of the graded assignment to Nola without comment. She responded, "These are stunning. The Wuthering Heights one especially. That typography is perfect." We started texting more regularly after that. Not every day, but a few times a week. She'd send me questions about my classes. I'd ask about her work. She told me about fights with Devin, about figuring out how to be married, about her struggles with his family who had very different values than hers. I told her about the weird customers at Target, about my frustration with my dad who kept overworking himself, about the designs I was working on. It felt different than before, more equal somehow. We weren't those inseparable girls who did everything together anymore. We were two separate people with separate lives who were carefully, tentatively, trying to build a bridge between our worlds. In March, Nola called me late one night. I could tell immediately something was wrong. "Can you talk?" she asked, her voice thick. "What happened?" "I had a miscarriage." She started crying. "I didn't even know I was pregnant. We weren't trying, and now it's gone, and I don't know why I'm so sad about something I didn't even want." I grabbed my laptop and started looking up flights to Portland. "Do you want me to come?" "What? No, I'm okay. Devin's here." "Are you sure? Because I can be there by tomorrow morning." She was quiet for a long moment. "You'd do that?" "Of course I would. You're going through something awful. But we're not. We haven't been close in so long. Doesn't mean I want you to suffer alone." I found a flight for $240. More than I could afford, but I'd figure it out. "Say the word, and I'm booking this." "I don't know. Maybe? Can I think about it for an hour?" "Take your time." She called me back 40 minutes later. "Don't come, but thank you for offering. It means everything that you would." "Are you sure?" "It's really not a problem. I'm sure. Devin's taking tomorrow off work and his sister is coming over tonight. I'm going to be okay." She took a shaky breath. "But can we stay on the phone for a bit? I just need to hear a familiar voice." We talked for 3 hours. About the miscarriage, about her complicated feelings about pregnancy, about her fear that this meant something was wrong with her, about her guilt for being sad about losing something she hadn't planned for. I mostly listened, occasionally offering the same kind of comfort she'd given me years ago when I was going through hard things. When we finally said goodnight, she said, "I really miss you. Like, really miss you. Not the idea of you or who we used to be, but you specifically. Your voice, your perspective, the way you make me feel like things will be okay even when they're not." "I miss you too," I admitted. "I didn't want to, but I do. I'm glad you're coming in June. I think we have a lot to figure out." "Yeah, we do." April brought warmer weather and the end of my first semester. I'd completed 6 courses with strong grades. My portfolio was building. My instructor kept encouraging me to think about freelancing, about taking on real clients, about turning this certificate into an actual career. "You're ready," she said during our final video conference. "You're better than most of the recent graduates I've worked with." I let myself believe her, just a little. I started taking on small projects through a freelance website, book covers for self-published authors, mostly. They didn't pay much, $50 here, $100 there, but seeing my work on actual books that people were buying and reading gave me a rush that made the dental office and Target feel even more suffocating by comparison. In May, one of my clients offered me a bigger project. An entire series of 6 books for $1,200. It would take up most of my free time for 6 weeks, but it was real money, enough that I could cut back to 4 days at Target instead of 6. I said yes without hesitating. Nola called to congratulate me when I told her. "This is incredible. You're actually doing it." "Doing what?" "Building a career. Becoming the person you were supposed to be. It's just a few book covers. I'm not exactly making a living at this yet." "Yet. That's the important word." I could hear the smile in her voice. "I'm so proud of you. And I know I keep saying that, but I need you to know I mean it. Watching you go for this has been one of the best parts of my year. Even though you're barely part of it, maybe because I'm barely part of it, it's not about me or us, it's about you finally letting yourself want something big enough to be scary." June arrived faster than I expected. The Seattle trip was suddenly real, no longer some abstract future event I could avoid thinking about. I packed and repacked my suitcase 3 times, unsure what to bring. What do you wear when you're trying to figure out if your former best friend can become part of your life again? The flight was smooth. Nola picked me up at the airport driving down from Portland. When I saw her standing at arrivals, holding a handmade sign that said, "Famous designer," with little drawings of books, something in my chest loosened. She looked good, healthier than during her visit home 2 years ago, more settled in herself. "Hey," she said, suddenly shy. "Hey." We hugged, and this time it didn't feel mechanical. It felt like something we both needed. The drive to Seattle took 3 hours. We spent the first 30 minutes in awkward small talk, traffic, weather, the podcast she'd been listening to. But somewhere around Olympia, the conversation shifted into something more real. "I'm nervous about this weekend," she admitted. "I don't know if we can fix what broke between us. Maybe it's not about fixing it. Maybe it's about deciding if we want to build something new. Do you want to?" I watched the trees blur past the window. "I don't know yet. I know I don't want to go back to what we were. That wasn't healthy for either of us. But I also know that talking to you these past few months has helped me in ways I didn't expect." "How so?" "You were the first person who believed I could actually do this design thing. Not my parents, not my instructor, you. And you don't even gain anything from it. You're not in my life enough to benefit. You just genuinely wanted me to succeed." I glanced at her. That meant something when I was ready to quit in March. "You almost quit?" The workload was crushing me. I was exhausted all the time. My bank account was a disaster. And I had this moment where I thought, who am I kidding? I'm not actually talented enough for this. I twisted the bracelet on my wrist. But then I remembered you saying that thing about how the world was worse off without my art in it. And it sounded so stupid and dramatic, but also, I don't know, it made me think maybe I owed it to myself to at least try. Nola's eyes were shiny. "I'm glad I could help, even in a small way." It wasn't small. We checked into the hotel, a a beautiful waterfront place with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. Our room had 2 queen beds and a sitting area. Nola had already laid out an itinerary for the weekend, with options circled for activities we could do together versus separately. I figured we'd need breaks from each other, she explained. Like, tomorrow morning there's a breakfast thing with Devon's co-workers that I have to attend, but you could sleep in or explore the Pike Place Market. Then in the afternoon there's a boat tour that we could do together if you want. Or there's a glass-blowing class I signed us up for, unless you'd hate that. Glass-blowing sounds fun, actually. Yeah? She looked relieved. Good. I thought it might be nice to do something with our hands. Something where we don't have to talk the whole time, but we're together. The glass-blowing class was exactly what we needed. We spent 2 hours learning to shape molten glass, making lumpy bowls that looked nothing like the instructor's examples. We laughed at our failures, competed over whose was worse, and forgot to be careful around each other. Mine looks like a deflated football, I said, examining my creation. Mine looks like something a cat vomited. Nola held hers up to the light. At least yours is symmetrical. Symmetrically terrible. We decided to keep both pieces. Nola said she'd put hers on her kitchen shelf as a reminder that not everything had to be perfect to be meaningful. I thought about what a metaphor that was for us, but didn't say it out loud. That evening, over dinner at a restaurant Devon had recommended, we finally talked about the hard stuff. I need to understand something, I said, pushing my pasta around my plate. When you got married and didn't include me, was that because you didn't want me there, or because you didn't know how to include me? Nola set down her fork. Honestly, both. I didn't want you there seeing me be happy without you. I felt guilty about moving on, about building this life that you weren't part of, and I also just didn't know where you'd fit. My Portland friends don't know anything about my life before I moved. Devon's met my family, but I've kept my past pretty vague. Having you there would have required explanations I wasn't ready to give. What kind of explanations? That I abandoned my best friend because I was scared of codependency. That I chose my own growth over our friendship. That I'm the kind of person who runs instead of dealing with hard things. She met my eyes. I didn't want them to know that about me. It's easier to be the girl who moved for a job and left her hometown behind than the girl who deliberately cut ties with someone who loved her. I did love you, I said quietly, like a sister. Sometimes more than I loved my actual family. I know, I loved you that way too. That's why it was so messed up. I loved you, but I also felt suffocated by you. Not because you were suffocating, but because I was using you as a reason not to be brave. Your mom really did a number on both of us. She did, and she was right, which makes it worse. Nola drank her wine, but she was also wrong. She made it sound like our friendship was the problem, when really, our friendship was just reflecting our individual problems. You were afraid to take risks. I was afraid to disappoint people. Together, we enabled each other's fears instead of challenging them. Could we have fixed it without you leaving? I don't know. Maybe. But I don't think I would have been brave enough to try. Leaving was the coward's way out, but it was the only way I knew how to change things. I thought about that. I don't think I would have changed anything either if you'd stayed. I'd have kept making excuses. Your mom forcing your hand at least created momentum, even if it hurt like hell. Do you forgive me? She asked. For leaving the way I did? For the wedding? For all of it? I considered the question seriously. I forgive you for leaving. I don't know if I forgive you for how you did it. For not being honest. For letting me think I wasn't good enough for your new life. That part still hurts. That's fair. But I also understand why you did it. And I'm starting to see how we were both responsible for the mess we created. I finished my wine. So I guess my answer is, I'm working on it. I'm not all the way there yet, but I'm closer than I was. That's more than I deserve, probably. But holding on to anger was exhausting, and it wasn't making my life better. We ordered dessert, a chocolate cake we split between us, just like we used to. The server brought 2 forks, and we ate from opposite sides of the plate, finding a rhythm that felt familiar, but not identical to before. Can I ask you something? Nola said between bites. Why did you really turn down Chicago? Was it just me, or was there more to it? I set down my fork. It was a lot of things. The money was scary. Leaving my parents felt selfish, especially with my dad's job situation being unstable. But yeah, you were a big part of it. We'd planned our whole lives around staying near each other. Going to Chicago felt like I was breaking a promise. A promise I never asked you to make. No, but I made it anyway. To myself, to us, to the version of our future we'd built together. I wiped my mouth with my napkin. And if I'm really honest, I turned it down because I was terrified I'd get there and realize I wasn't as talented as I thought. As long as I stayed here and didn't try, I could keep believing I could have made it. If I went and failed, I'd have to accept that maybe I was never that special after all. And now? Are you still afraid of that? Every single day. But I'm doing it anyway. That's braver than I've ever been. We walked back to the hotel along the waterfront. The city lights reflected on the water, and the air smelled like salt and possibility. We didn't talk, just walked side by side, comfortable in the silence. Back in our room, as we got ready for bed, Nola said, "Thank you for coming this weekend, for giving this a chance. Thank you for asking me, and for being honest about everything, even though it took you way too long." She smiled. I'm trying to do better at that. Being honest even when it's scary. Me too. That night, I lay in bed thinking about how endings and beginnings weren't always distinct moments, how sometimes they overlapped, blurring together, until you couldn't tell where one stopped and the other started. Our old friendship had ended 2 years ago in that coffee shop parking lot, but maybe something new had been beginning all along, growing slowly through awkward texts and late-night calls and the willingness to keep showing up even when it hurt. The next morning, Nola went to her breakfast meeting and I walked to Pike Place Market. I watched the fish throwers, browsed the flowers, ate too many samples at the cheese shop. It felt good to be alone in a new city, to prove to myself I could exist independently even when Nola was nearby. When she texted asking if I wanted to grab lunch, I said yes. We met at a seafood place she'd been wanting to try. Devon joined us, and I got to actually meet him for the first time. He was nice, Funny, self-deprecating, clearly crazy about Nola. He asked me about my design work with genuine interest, showed me pictures of the house they were hoping to buy, told embarrassing stories about Nola at work that made her blush and hit his arm. She talks about you a lot, he said at one point. It's good to finally meet the famous best friend. Former best friend, I corrected automatically. Current friend trying to figure out where she fits, Nola added, squeezing my hand. That's fair, Devin said. I hope you can figure it out. She's been a lot happier since you two started talking again. After lunch, Nola and I did the boat tour. We saw whales in the distance, learned about the local ecosystem, took 100 photos. We talked about easy things, TV shows, her house hunt, my second semester starting in a few weeks. On Sunday morning, our last day, we had breakfast at the hotel and then sat on the patio overlooking the water. I'm glad we did this, I said. It helped. Yeah? Yeah. I think I needed to see that we could spend time together without it being painful or weird, that there might actually be a path forward for us. What does that path look like for you? She asked. Like, in a best-case scenario, what would you want our friendship to be? I thought about it. I want us to be honest with each other, to celebrate each other's wins without resentment, to be able to call when something important happens, good or bad. But I also need space to be my own person, to have my own life that doesn't revolve around you. That sounds healthy. It's different from what we were. Different isn't always bad. No, I agreed. Sometimes it's necessary. We were quiet for a while, watching the boats in the harbor. I want those things too, Nola finally said. I want to be the kind of friend who shows up when you need me, but who doesn't need you to need me. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. And I want you to feel like you can tell me when I'm screwing up, when I'm being distant or selfish or falling back into old patterns. I don't want to do the slow fade again. If this isn't working, I want us to talk about it. Deal. I held out my hand and we shook on it, both laughing at the formality. One more thing, she said. I want you to meet Devin's sister. She runs a small publishing house in Portland, mostly literary fiction, some poetry. They're always looking for cover designer. If you're interested, I could introduce you. My heart stuttered. Are you serious? Completely. I showed her your work. I hope that's okay. And she was really impressed. No promises, but she said she'd be open to talking to you about potential freelance work. Nola, before you get all grateful and weird, this is purely selfish. If you get work through her, you'll have an excuse to visit Portland more often, which means I get to see you more often. She grinned. I'm using my connections to lure you back into my life. I can't tell if that's manipulative or sweet. Probably both. I contain multitudes. I laughed, genuinely laughed, and it felt like something unlocking in my chest. The drive back to Portland was easier than the drive to Seattle. We sang along to songs on the radio, stopped at a random roadside diner for milkshakes, took photos in front of a weird roadside attraction shaped like a giant teapot. It felt almost like old times, but better somehow. Less desperate, more secure. When she dropped me at the airport for my flight home, we hugged for a long time. This isn't fixed, I said into her shoulder. We're not back to how we were. I know, but I think maybe we're on our way to something better. I hope so. She pulled back to look at me. I love you. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that yet, but I do. Not the way I used to, but in a new way that feels more honest. I love you too, in that same new way. Text me when you land. I will. I did text her. And I texted her the next day, and the day after that. We fell into an easy rhythm of communication. Not obsessive like when we were younger, but steady and genuine. 2 weeks later, I had a video call with Devin's sister, Rhiannon. She offered me a trial project. One book cover to see if we worked well together. The pay was modest but fair. If it went well, she had an entire series she needed designed. I accepted. My second semester started, and I threw myself into it with renewed energy. I was learning more advanced techniques, building my portfolio, networking with other students. The program was only supposed to take a year, but I'd extended it to give myself more time while managing my jobs. I was on track to finish by next spring. The book cover for Rhiannon turned out better than I'd hoped. She loved it. Offered me the series, 4 more books over the next 6 months. I did the math. Between her work and other freelance projects, I could potentially make enough to quit Target. Not the dental office yet, but Target for sure. I gave my 2 weeks notice on my 26th birthday. My manager was disappointed but understanding. My coworkers threw me a small party during lunch break with a cake that said, "Good luck, famous artist." That night, Nola called to congratulate me. You did it. You're actually making this happen. Don't jinx it. I'm barely scraping by. But you're scraping by doing work you love. That counts for something. It counts for everything. We talked for an hour, and for the first time in years, it felt completely natural. No forcing, no performance, no awkwardness. Just 2 people who knew each other deeply, who'd hurt each other badly, and who were choosing to rebuild anyway. I'm coming home for Christmas, she said before we hung up, just for a few days. Would you want to get together? My old instinct was to say yes immediately, to clear my schedule, to make her the priority. But I paused, thought about it honestly. I'd love to, but I have a deadline on December 23rd, and my family has plans on Christmas Eve. Could we do the 26th? That works perfect. Devin's family does their celebration on Christmas, so I'm free that day. It's a plan. And it was. A plan built on honesty and boundaries, and the understanding that we both had full lives that existed independently. When December came, we met at a different coffee shop. Not our old one with all its ghosts, but a new place that neither of us had history with. A blank slate. She looked good, happy, settled. How's married life? I asked. Good. Hard sometimes, but good. How's the design business? Terrifying and amazing. I'm behind on 3 projects and completely overwhelmed, but also more alive than I've felt in years. We laughed and talked for 3 hours. She told me about the house they'd bought, about Devin's annoying habit of leaving cabinets open, about her promotion at work. I told her about my growing client list, about the possibility of quitting the dental office by next summer, about the online community of designers I joined who were becoming real friends. You seem different, she observed. More confident. I am different. I think we both are. For the better? Yeah, definitely for the better. As we walked to our cars, she said, I know I've said this before, but I'm really sorry. For all of it. For letting your mom manipulate me. For leaving the way I did. For cutting you out of my wedding. I can't take any of it back. But I need you to know I'd do it differently if I had the chance. I know. And I'm sorry too. For making you my excuse. For not being brave enough to have hard conversations. For holding on to anger longer than I needed to. So we're good? I thought about it. Really thought about it. We're not what we were. But yeah, I think we're good. We're building something new. And I think it might actually be better than what we had before. Even though we're not inseparable anymore. Especially because we're not inseparable. We're separate people who choose to be in each other's lives. That's healthier than what we had. She hugged me tight. Thank you for giving me another chance. I know I didn't deserve it. Maybe not. But I needed to give it anyway. For both of us. We still text regularly now. Not every day. Sometimes a week goes by between messages. But when something important happens, she's one of the first people I tell. And I'm one of the first people she tells. It's different from before. Less intense, less consuming, less codependent. But it's also more honest, more sustainable, more real. We're not best friends anymore. We're not inseparable. We're just two women who grew up together, grew apart, and are slowly, carefully, learning how to grow together again. This time as the people we actually are, not the people we thought we had to be for each other. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need. Not a return to the past, but a reimagining of what the future could look like if you're brave enough to try. Last month, Nola called with news. She and Devin are expecting. She's terrified and excited and asked if I'd be willing to design the birth announcement. I'd be honored, I told her. And she hesitated. I'd really like you to be at the baby shower, if you want to come. No pressure. I'd love to. This time, I wasn't an afterthought. I was actively chosen, deliberately included. That makes all the difference. My design certificate is almost complete. I'm scheduled to graduate in April. Rhiannon has offered me steady work, and I've built up enough other clients that I'm giving my notice at the dental office next month. By my 27th birthday, I'll be working as a designer full-time. It took me almost 4 years longer than it should have. 4 years of being too scared, too stuck, too comfortable in my smallness. But I'm here now, finally doing the thing I was too afraid to do when I was 23. And Nola's there, on the other side of those 2,000 miles cheering me on. Not as my crutch or my excuse or my reason to stay small, but as my friend, imperfect and human and honest about her mistakes. We're not the girls we were. We'll never be those girls again. But maybe that's okay. Maybe losing who we were was necessary to become who we needed to be. Maybe the goodbye I thought would last forever wasn't really a goodbye at all. Maybe it was just a long, painful transition from one version of friendship to another, from childhood dependence to adult choice, from needing each other to wanting each other in our lives. I don't know what the next chapter looks like for us. Maybe we'll get close again. Maybe we'll drift apart. Maybe we'll stay in this comfortable middle ground where we're important to each other but not essential. But I know this. Whatever happens, it'll be honest. We'll talk about it. We'll make choices with open eyes instead of running away or clinging too tight. And that's more than I thought we'd ever have again. So when people ask me about that time I knew a goodbye would last forever, I tell them the truth. I was wrong. It wasn't a forever goodbye. It was just the end of one story and the beginning of another. Sometimes the most important friendships in your life aren't the ones that stay the same. They're the ones that survive change, that bend without breaking, that find a way to exist in new forms when the old ones stop serving you. Nola and I had to break before we could rebuild. Had to lose each other before we could find each other again. And I think we're both better for it. Different, but better. Separate, but connected. Not what we were, but maybe, just maybe, something more sustainable. Something that can grow and flex and adjust as we continue becoming whoever we're meant to be. That's not the story I expected to tell, but it's the one I'm living. And I'm finally okay with that.